Any improvement on that or no?
Nope.
Any improvement on that or no? Nope.
No
Heard myself
improvement.
twice.
Same
Okay.
thing.
All right. Let's see. All right. How about now?
Yes, there we go.
Yes,
There we go. Okay. Yes. There we go. Okay.
yes.
I don't know why I'm hearing myself twice, but I'm going to leave.
all right.
And
Can you
Mark,
guys,
just sorry, Mark, are you okay for now?
Yep. Yeah.
And I won't
I don't
be
know
far.
what happened there. So I think we're
Okay.
good.
thanks, Mike.
Okay.
No problem.
Mark,
Sorry about-
can you go ahead and make everybody a panelist? I'm going to allow full participation from folks.
Yeah, sure. All the attendees.
Yep,
Yes. I'll do that now.
thank you.
Yeah.
Jerry, do you want to start with the public safety portion of the meeting?
Let me find out if,
Safety portion.
Brian,
Let me find out if.
somebody's giving us feedback.
Should be good now.
Somebody, if you can mute.
Yeah, we're gonna ask if everybody can mute except for when they're talking. That would be helpful.
Brian Lafferty, are you on, or is it just that you're here?
All right,
I
if
got
Brian,
78, but they're not responding.
Hello.
Ah, well, they are. Okay.
How you doing?
Captain, it's nice to see you.
so Jerry, if you would just do the honors of introducing the meeting and the,
Okay, no problem. I didn't realize I was going first, but that's okay. No. Obviously, folks, this is the meeting of the CB6 Transportation and Public Safety Committee. We have two items on the agenda tonight. One is a meeting and little briefing by the new CO of the 78th Precinct. And afterwards, we're going to, Eric, who chairs the other half of the committee, will be discussing the proposal to expand the CitiBike CitiBikes within the area of CB6. And I assume that DOT will be presenting the locations. So with that, let me begin the public safety portion. As I'm sure most of you know, the New York City Police Department rotates COs in and out of precincts on a 2 to 3 year, sometimes a little longer basis. Captain Souffrant has been assigned as the role of the current CO. He's very new to the precinct, but in one respect, we're lucky. He's not that new. He served as the XO of the precinct a while back. He was there for 4 months during a period during the summer, and he is fairly familiar with the precinct. Most of the times we get new COs who don't know even where to park. So with that, I'm going to ask Captain Souffrant to talk to us, tell us a little about his background and what he sees as the upcoming problems or how he's going to tackle the park, Prospect Park this summer. With that, Captain, the floor is yours. But you do have to unmute yourself.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, my name is Frantz. Just real briefly, I have 15 years with the police department. I've worked in various areas in Brooklyn. I started my career in East New York. I also worked in Bensonhurst. I also worked in Crown Heights, and I worked a little brief stint in the Bronx. So my last assignment was Crown Heights, where I was the XO for the 7-1. Actually, the commanding officer there was injured due to riots. So I was actually tapped to become the acting CO there for a couple of months until I got the call, and I said I was getting the 7-8. So I'm extremely happy to be here. I hope that my community affairs officers have relayed to everyone that my biggest thing is communication. I think that especially with what's been going on last year, that communication with law enforcement is a big key. You know, we need you, to ensure that, the public safety mission is getting done. So to do that, we have to make sure that, okay, we're able to communicate and address problems and such. And I will do the best of my ability to ensure that we can get it done if it's within our area of expertise. Real quick, just in terms of just crime in general in the area, we're relatively down. I think maybe 33% decrease from last year, this time last year, which is really good. And I hope we can continue to drive down those numbers. Right now, currently things that I'm kind of like in the works of doing is actually getting a detail together for Prospect Park. I haven't talked to anyone yet in regards to if there's going to be any events, but in the event that there is, I'm trying to ensure that I have the proper personnel to have coverage for the park. And I think that's it in a nutshell, if anyone has any questions.
If folks could use the raised hand function at the bottom of your screen to get in queue to ask questions, that would be great. Jerry, I'll let you do the recognition if.
I'm looking right now, Joanna Smith. Joanna, you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I think that worked. Hi, good evening, and welcome back. I just wanted to throw out for your consideration something that a former CEO had going at the 7-8, which was bike-based patrols. And particularly when you're staffing up for park patrols, it's a great mode to consider because it allows the officers to interact with the public much more readily than when they're in a patrol car. And it also increases safety on park paths. And now that the park is car-free, it would be great to reduce the number of vehicles there. So that's a little transportation idea for you. Thanks.
Okay, next is Natasha V. Don't forget to
Hi.
unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes,
can.
we can.
Wonderful. With the defund the police movement, a lot of I've heard mental health calls differently. They're sending out specifically trainings to handle mental health instead of sending a detail. I'm wondering how 7th, 8th precinct is now handling those calls because there have been complaints passed.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? There was a fire truck that just passed by.
Along with the defund the police movement, precinct asked to have, different types of calls differently. So in particular, mental health calls, some precincts are sending out specially trained teams to handle calls, not, necessarily a detail from the precinct. And I'm wondering if the 7-8 routing mental health to a specially trained team or if details are still going out. Sir, there have been complaints about how those calls have been handled in the past.
All right, so you're kind of cutting in and out, so I didn't get the total question. I think you're referencing mental health calls.
Yes, that's correct.
There hasn't been any change in the 7-8 at this time in terms of how we address mental health calls. As of right now, it's still the same. So I'm sure that in the upcoming months, there may be some procedural changes, but as of now, if we get a call for a person in distress, the primary unit is going to be the police department, also with the EMTs.
Okay, thank you. I don't see, let me just check. Hold on 1 minute. I don't see anybody else with
Van.
questions, Eric.
Van and then Christina. Van, why don't you go
Didn't show,
first?
I'm not showing up on mine.
Hey, so I'm Van. I'm one of the committee members and board members. Just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on maybe improved ways of enforcing cyclists riding on sidewalks as well as not following traffic laws. So the reason I ask is I'm a member of the visually impaired community. So, you know, sometimes I don't see a cyclist till they're literally inches away, and rather not get hit again.
You're not the only person that has been bringing cyclists to my attention. We will be conducting some enforcement, but I guess sometimes a lot of people kind of, when they think about the police department, why certain things aren't getting done, there's always these certain assumptions. And I think it's always about the amount of personnel are we dedicating to these actual conditions. And that's where it becomes problematic. And sometimes, you know, we have to use precision policing, right? So I'll jot it down, of course. You know, I'll talk to my officers to, you know, to look for those things, to obviously write any summonses or any infractions that they see above them. But, you know, sometimes like we'll see things and we kind of say to ourselves, well, why is this not getting done? Because I see this all the time. It's usually because of the volume of calls. So the more volume of calls that we have, then it's less likely that I could dedicate those officers to that specific task, if that makes sense.
Okay. We have one more, Christine Doyle.
That's me.
And can you take your hand down?
Okay, let me, yeah, this is also new to me, so I'm lowering my hand.
Thank you.
This hand will be up, that hand is down. Hi, my name is Christine Doyle. I moved to Park Slope after the World Trade Center. I lived in Manhattan my whole life until then, and that got me to Brooklyn, and I was lucky enough to find myself here. First, I'd like to welcome you and tell you, yes, I think our priorities are to have a police community relationship improve. It's been very difficult, this, you know, a difficult summer, a difficult year, and I would like to help you in any way that I can do that. I will be speaking with Terry Alexander and a few others this Saturday morning for an interview for the 78th Precinct Board. So I'm really on top of that. Now, one question I would have for you is, I know the 78 does patrol this area. Barclays Center has had an encampment for a year now of packages and groceries and trash that all exist at that tip there. I know everyone knows what I'm talking about now. It's not a home. People aren't living there. They're storing their things there. And I want to know if that department is sanitation or is that NYPD's responsibility?
When it comes to the encampments, we are not the lead agency, but I am very aware because I actually crime prevention officers while I was just driving around. So I have observed that. We're actually coordinating a cleanup, and at the same time having an outreach to ensure that, okay, if it's just trash, then okay, then can we just easily remove it? But if it's an actual homeless person and that's their property, we could take whatever actions, you know, that could be appropriate. You know, so I am aware of it. I would have to pull up my email on. I did receive a response, so it's just all about just getting it done.
Okay. Thank you and welcome here.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Just Natasha V, if you take your hand down, that would on the chat, that would be on the participants, that would be helpful. And I think that's it.
I have one more question.
And who you are?
Natasha.
Oh, okay.
That's why my hand's still up.
I'm
So I just
sorry.
want to ask, what's the schedule for the community meetings at the precinct? I know because of COVID, you know, people, you know, kind of gotten caught up in, you know, different ways of, you know, carrying out these meetings. But I was wondering, you know, what the schedule is now. Is it every second Tuesday or something like that, or every month virtually?
Yes, ma'am. It's going to be virtual as of now. It'll be next week at 7:30. Laffer, you can reach out to the community affairs offices and they'll be able to provide a link.
Okay. Eric, that seems to be it. Captain, thank you very much. And there are no other questions. Eric, we can proceed now with the,
I just want to make a quick clarification. It's not next week. It's going to be March 30th. March 30th at 7:30 will be the next community council meeting.
Thanks, Captain. And
Thank you.
will it will be the last Tuesday of the month going forward then? Great. Thank you very much for joining us. Again, welcome back to the 7-8, and we're glad to have you with us. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eric McClure. I'm the co-chair of the Transportation Committee of Community Board 6. Thanks for joining us this evening. We've made everybody a panelist so that you do have your camera and can be heard. We invite you to participate fully in the meeting. I will recognize people when you raise your hand to participate, but we will start off by inviting the Department of Transportation to present. The agenda item is a presentation on the expansion of the CitiBike bike share program and increase in the density of the program within Park Slope. So we'll invite the people from the 78th Precinct from the Department of Transportation to make their presentation. If you could introduce yourselves, that would be great.
Hi, yeah. My name is Emily Riquelme. I'm the community liaison for CB6, and I'm just here to facilitate the presentation that our bike share unit team has here. And so I'll pass it off to Mabel, and she can introduce themselves.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. My name is Mabel, and I'm a planner in the bike share unit. And I'm joined today by Caitlin and David, who are also, we're working together on the putting forth the plan, and Caitlin will be presenting it. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Thank you, everyone.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin. As Mabel mentioned, I'm going to share my screen now. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I can see it.
Great. Okay, then I'll begin. So thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. As mentioned, my name is Caitlin. I am a bike share planner at New York City Department of Transportation, and I'm here with Mabel and David. So for this presentation, I'm going to start off by talking about CitiBike overall, and then go further into our phase 3 portion, which is expansion and infill. And then we'll go into more detail about the plans here at Community Board 6. And then after that, we will open up to Q&A. So to start things off, I want to just share more about an overview of the CitiBike program here at New York City. So what is CitiBike? So that's the name of New York City's bike share system. So it is a transportation mode of shared bicycles that provide point-to-point transportation. The system operates 24/7. It allows additional transportation modes for all New Yorkers. And with this bike share program, it gives New Yorkers the convenience of using a bike without the hassle of storing or maintaining a bike. So CitiBike is a public-private partnership. For the public portion, that's New York City Department of Transportation, and we are responsible for planning, outreach, and oversight. And then our private partners are Lyft, and they are responsible for day-to-day operations, equipment, and maintenance. And so to give more of a history of the CitiBike program, it launched in 2013, so a little over 7 years now. And as you can see in the map on the right, it started in the light blue area. So it started in Lower Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn. Then in 2015, it expanded further into Manhattan and further into Brooklyn and also Queens for the first time. And so today we are currently in phase 3. And so that means that we are expanding into Manhattan, Brooklyn, and Queens, and we're also going into the Bronx for the first time. So we are going to add 35 square miles to the bike share system, and we're also adding 24,000 bikes. And so with this rapid expansion, we also want to note that we have high ridership for the bike share program. So we have had over 113 million trips to date. And then in 2020 alone, we had over 19.6 million trips. So this roughly averages out to one bike provided 5.5 trips in a day. And then in our peak riding months, which tend to be our warmer months, we have approximately 70,000 daily trips. And I think even last year, we hit over 100,000 trips in one day, which was very exciting. And so we have approximately 170,000 annual members. And then in 2020, we had over 600,000 first-time riders. So in response to the COVID-19 outbreak, we do want to address some of the things we are doing to ensure rider and employee safety. So that includes cleaning high contact areas on bikes when returned to the depot, disinfecting bikes when docked at high-use stations near hospitals, and we are also using social distance practices when handling bikes to help ensure safety of our employees. We have also started the Critical Workforce Membership Program. This provides free memberships for essential workers. So from April to December in the year of 2020, we had over 800,000 rides taken by approximately 20,000 essential workers. And so as you can see in the photo on the right, these are some essential workers participating in our Critical Workforce Membership Program. And so now that I've talked about CitiBike overall, I want to talk more about the phase 3, which we're in right now, which we call expansion and infill. So phase 3 is broken into two parts. Expansion, as you can see in the map on the right, is the blue area. So this is going into areas of the city that has not had the bike share program yet. So this is going to add 32,000 new docks in these areas, 16,000 bicycles, and it's going to be in approximately 35 square miles, essentially doubling the footprint of the CitiBike program. And then phase 3 infill, which is the area in gray in the map, this is adding capacity to the existing service area. So this will have 16,000 new docks, 8,000 new bikes, and it's already in an area that is approximately 33 square miles that already contains 29,000 docks and over 13,000 bicycles. And so why is infill part of phase 3? A larger CitiBike system will have many more bicycles in the core. So thinking of the concept of gravity and also looking at other patterns of other transportation modes in the city, we anticipate riders moving towards the central business districts, as you can see on the map. We are also acknowledging the demand for bikes shift throughout the day. So infill helps the larger system to function. So as we continue to expand in the expansion part of our program, infill helps complement that. And then it's also a great opportunity to help address some of the unmet demands that riders currently have regarding their difficulty sometimes of finding a bike or finding a dock. So helping rebalancing that part of the program. And so this will help the system overall. So it's important to note that infill has a different timeline than expansion. So this is going to be a 4-year ongoing rollout of new and expanded stations, and areas of highest demand will receive the most docks. And so with this rolling installation, this means that we may cover multiple community boards at a time. And this process is designed to be iterative so that we can look at the patterns and the use of the station, and so that we can adjust accordingly to help the system overall. And so for our phase 3 infill, we are looking at a few ways to help increase our capacity. So this includes adding new stations, expanding existing stations, and even considering creative design solutions. So if you look at the photo on the right, this is a station that we call 3D bridging because it allows us to have part of the station on the sidewalk and part of the station on the roadbed. And so now that I talked about Phase 3 program, I want to go more into the details of infill in Brooklyn Community Board 6. So our planning process for Community Board 6, which is similar to the other community boards that we do, we look at several things. So first is we look at community feedback. We have an online feedback portal, and so that's where we can receive requests from riders and stakeholders. We also look at ridership data to help see where extra capacity is needed. And then we look at the network to help see where there are gaps in the service. So if you look at the photo on the right, this is a map of Community Board 6. And we have 3 different symbols for our bike share stations. So the gray represents existing stations that are not affected by the Phase 3 infill plans. Then we have blue, which are the existing stations that we plan to extend. And then we have orange, which are our planned new stations. I also want to note if a station has a green circle underneath, we call that a dockability need, which means that our users have difficulty finding an empty dock where they can place their bike. So if we add more docks to these stations, it'll help the system and help users overall. Also want to note the larger gray circles help us identify our network gaps. So anywhere where the circles are not covered, we would consider that a possible network gap. So as you can note, a lot of our new stations are in those areas to help fill that need. And so for Community Board 6, our infill plan has planned around 23 station extensions and 10 new stations. And so zooming further into the different areas for the next slide is, so this is the southwest corner. So here you can see we have around, I believe, 3 new stations and around 5 or so station extensions. And again, gray is the ones that currently exist but are not part of the infill plan. And then for this is more in the northwest corner of the community board. And so again, I think we have around 11 or so extensions and around 2 new stations here. And then finally in the northeast portion, also kind of spilling over into the park, we have, I believe, around 7 station extensions and 3 new stations for our plan. And so with that in mind, thank you for the opportunity again to speak with you, and we'll open it up for questions where myself, Mabel, and David can help answer some questions. Thank you.
Great, Caitlin, thank you so much for the presentation. If folks have questions, please use the raise hand function. I'll recognize you. Try to keep your questions brief so everybody gets a chance to participate. If there is a motion made at any time by the committee, only committee members will be able to speak while the motion is on the floor. Obi, I see your message. Hold on one second. Mark, can you make sure that all the attendees are made panelists?
Yes. Obi is a panelist, and I just added one more.
Obi, you should be able to unmute and ask your question.
Oh, thank you. I couldn't raise my hand. I can see a raise a hand feature. I didn't want to call out. Thank you so much, Kate, for that presentation. I just want to introduce myself real quick. My name is Obi Frier. I'm the public safety organizer for the Red Hook Initiative, who we are a primary organization who works surrounding the Red Hook houses and the Red Hook neighborhood. For those of y'all who may be familiar with the Red Hook neighborhood, the Red Hook houses are the largest of the NYCHA public housing neighborhoods. So what I'm interesting about your presentation, Caitlin, and as someone who is a CitiBike user frequently and who visits communities, the interesting thing about that map that you have, could you go through the process just a little bit about, like, or just quickly explain, like, how neighborhoods are chosen for priority? Like, what distinguishes the neighborhood as being this is a high need neighborhood for city bikers? Because I have I apologize. Am I a little choppy?
Yeah, I think we're having.
I'm sorry. Can you guys hear me now?
We can. So if you want to ask your question again, and if it gets choppy, I'll let you know. And if you could just post the question instead, that would work too.
Yes. I'll try one more time. Can y'all hear me a little bit better now?
No, it's still choppy. So why don't you? If you could post your question in the chat.
I'll just post your question in the chat box.
And I'll move on to some other questions while Obi's posting. Jerry, you want to go ahead?
Yes, can you put back the slide for Red Hook? That way I can,
This one?
yes. On all of the way in the lower right, left-hand corner, you have an orange indication on Reed Street and Conover. Exactly where is that? Because it's on Reed, or is it on Conover?
I think David can have more details on that. I believe it's on Conover.
That's correct. It's on Conover, south of Reed Street on the east side roadbed.
That is the only legal parking on that side of the street in that area. The other side, the west side, there is no parking Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. You have a large residential development there with people who need spots to park. Is there any chance of moving that around the corner onto Reed Street about 125 to 130 feet down Reed Street on the south side of the street?
I'm not sure about the viability of the location you're describing, but I will say that we did select this location because it's on the dead end section there. There was an understanding there would not be an issue with truck traffic in the area. And that was one of a couple factors that pointed us to that location.
But there is a problem with the people who live in the building at the dead end. There is a problem, if you can, why not put it on the west side of the street where there's no parking, for instance? The east side of the street has alternate side of the street parking. The west side does not. Reed Street is also a street where there's no parking, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. There has to be, just because it's a dead end street does not make it a viable location when it does have some traffic on it going in and out of the building there. And depending where you're putting it, you have the exit from the parking lot from what used to be Fairway and is now Food Bazaar. So you're creating, it's just not a good spot. And I'm not saying take it away from that location. There are two places, the Crab Shack and Hometown Barbecue, that would benefit from CitiBike being down there. But I think there has to be a better location than right there. And yes, Van Brunt Street's out of the question, too many trucks, which is why I'm suggesting either Reed Street or on the sidewalk on the west side of the street, on the west side of Conover, using the sidewalk. Thank you.
David, do you know if that location is proposed is in the street bed or on the sidewalk there?
That location is proposed in the roadbed.
Okay.
And just to one point of information, the west side of the roadbed is marked no parking, or there is no parking there. I'm not sure the exact regulation. So that's not an area that we can cite a station if there's with that regulation.
Okay. On the feedback portal, can you guys post the link to that in the chat, and we'll so people will be able to give feedback on the particular proposed locations?
Eric, just one other point.
Yep.
It would be nice on these new locations if we have some idea of how DOT picks them, what's the criteria? Because it's a dead-end street, I'm just curious. As far as the expansions go, obviously that's based on usage, dock availability, and other factors that are very easy to measure. On the new locations, especially this one that I'm talking about, it would be nice if we could get a copy of the criteria they look at. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. And I'm going to assume that the criteria for selection are the same as they were or have been all along for CitiBike, which is fairly detailed with how close they can be to a corner, how close they can be to a fire hydrant, things like that. Caitlin, if you have a quick summation of those, you can give them, or you guys can send us the information on citing.
Yeah, we can look into sending. Oh, about.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that's something that we can share with you after the meeting. I'll send it to the board tomorrow along with the presentation.
Thank you. Do you guys see Obi's question in the chat? I think that was the next one up. I can read it if you don't see it. It's how are neighborhoods chosen? That map to me does not represent highest need. It represents richest and whitest population. Is it a matter of bike lane accessibility? Wouldn't neighborhoods like Red Hook, East New York, Brownsville, deeper parts of the Bronx that don't have great access to MTA, why are they not the main priority for CitiBike access?
Thank you, Obi. Yeah, I can take this question. So these plans specifically, oh, and just a quick note, I added the link to the feedback portal. So this is continuously open. And as Caitlin had said previously, this is infill is an iterative process. So we'll kind of keep taking the feedback as it comes on the portal and adjusting areas as necessary based on need. But to Obi's question, so the infill portion is just one part of the phase 3 plan. So the other part that we're also working on is the expansion portion. So unfortunately, a lot of the neighborhoods that you mentioned, Obi, aren't in the phase 3 plans, but what we're doing is that we're expanding the existing service area because we have to grow in a contiguous manner. So slowly expanding so that we can get to those further outlying neighborhoods.
Thanks, Mabel. Glenn Kelly.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Could you switch to the slide showing Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill, and the expansion? Yes. So at the corner of Carroll Street and Smith, adjacent to Carroll Park, can you describe how that's going to be expanded? Certain number of docks?
Yeah, I'm having difficulty with my screen share, looking at my notes, but I can share you that information of Carroll Street and Smith,
Okay.
I believe.
I mentioned this because I'm a member of the Friends of Carroll Park. I know that the placement of the bicycles there has created a hardship for the Parks Department picking up the trash from Carroll Park, which they do on a regular basis. There are bikes from the corner of Smith Street. It's got to be 30-something bikes, and if it's just going to be extended down Carroll Street, I would ask you to consider creating a gap right at the entrance to the park so that the Parks Department could pull up their truck and be able to load directly through a gap in the bike docks rather than have to go all the way around them.
Hi, Glenn. Thank you for those comments. And so for any stations adjacent to parks, or we always coordinate with parks, specifically on operations. So definitely if that's something that they flag with to us, that's something that we can coordinate with them on. But yeah, we coordinate with them on every station adjacent to a park for those specific reasons.
I would ask you to reach out to them again because I see an opportunity to improve the situation.
Great. Yeah, we're definitely in an ongoing coordination with the Parks Department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Glenn. Joanna?
Hi, I am super excited about the expansions. I have run into the docking issues you mentioned, and also just general availability issues, especially midday. I had a specific question about the North Slope map. Kind of right around the area where you have the key to the map is a service gap. And I just wanted to call it to your attention and point out that it's right near the Park Slope Food Co-op, which has a lot of people who might come on CitiBike if there were a station near it. So I think we're still looking at Carroll Gardens, but you guys probably know the area I'm talking about, like around Union and 7th Avenue. There is a station about a block and a half away from the food co-op, but there are a number of spots right on Union that are like decommissioned bus stop I'm thinking of in particular. And anyway, kind of right where you have the map key, it would be great to get another infill station if that's an option, but I'm really happy to see the ones you have. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know.
Thanks, Joanna. Stephen DiGregorio, Stephen, if you would just identify yourself, I'm happy to hear your question.
Yeah, I just lowered my hand. Hi, I'm Stephen. This is my partner, John.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us.
Welcome.
So I wanted to join because I understand that the location that's contemplated for expansion on Congress Street and Clinton Street in Cobble Hill, there's, I guess, a proposed expansion of about 30 feet of the existing rack. And I wanted to take this opportunity to oppose the expansion. It creates a lot of safety issues in our neighborhood because people have to cross Clinton Street to get to and from the port. And I also live in one of the buildings, that the port is right outside of. And for our buildings, which are, they're low-rise buildings, they're 6 stories that are a little bit higher density. It's very, very noisy at, really the issue is at nighttime, and also when the CitiBike port is being serviced. So there's, some safety issues, especially traffic safety issues. And, there's a number of older residents in my building who are in their 80s, and we even have some nonagenarians in our building. And because the space between the bike, docks is so narrow, it makes access in and out of our buildings much less convenient. And
can I add something?
Yeah.
And specifically in regard to the residents of older age in our buildings, God forbid if an emergency vehicle ever needs to be docked in front of the building and they need access on a stretcher, they would be unable to do that. So the safety sort of extends beyond just traffic. It also extends to the older residents in our building being able to have access to medical care and so forth. But I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Yeah, and then there are locations that make far more sense. Specifically, along Cobble Hill Park on Congress Street is one example of an area that makes a lot more sense because it's directly next to the Clinton Street bike lane. So people wouldn't have to cross Clinton Street, and it would probably discourage more people from riding the wrong way up Congress Street, which happens very frequently. So, you know, I sort of oppose the expansion of the existing port and would strongly urge you to reconsider that. And if there does need to be the expansion, when, you know, as others have mentioned, there's a huge density of ports right in our neighborhood, that, you know, maybe it be placed along the park, or it could be placed on Clinton Street along the park, which are both, you know, locations that abut the bike lane directly and would, you know, cause less safety issues. And one other question I had is just, you know, it sounds like that infill link you gave is just to give feedback on suggesting new areas for infill, but I was wondering who's the contact at DOT if people wanted to give feedback and email someone directly.
I guess first of all, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We can definitely review this station for safety and accessibility. I think our best contact info is bikeshare@dot.nyc.gov. Is that correct, Mabel?
Yeah, you can email us through that email.
Yeah, if you don't mind
also-
putting that in the chat as well, that would be really helpful so that everyone has access to it. That would be actually really helpful. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thanks. And if anybody does email DOT about locations, pro, con, or indifferent, if you would CC info@brooklyncb6.org on those emails as well, that will allow us to make sure that we're seeing them. Thank you, guys, for your comments. Dave Herman.
Just one second. Okay. I just had a question about if you go back to planning process slide. Just, I may have missed it. Just what does dockability mean?
So dockability is something we assess. It's, I guess, our term for say, if a station has difficulty finding an empty dock because all the docks are filled with bikes, so it means our user can't dock there when they're riding their bike. That's what we consider a dockability need. So it's essentially a station that's full of bikes. So anyone riding around cannot put their bike there.
So would those be for sites for possible future infill, expansion or infill, I guess?
Yeah, so the ones in blue, right, with the green.
Sorry, because like, for example, on the south slope, you have, sometimes they're full, but you have two of them on, one's on Bartol Pritchard and the other's on, was it 14th and 5th? And just there was no extra infill there. I don't know if it needs it, but I'm just saying that I know the one on 5th often I see it pretty full.
That's true. Yeah, sometimes we did try to prioritize, the ones that in green, the one we consider dockability. But for various reasons, there may be obstructions such as hydrants or curb cuts and other siting criteria. It might just not be considered for this phase, but we could look at it again.
Okay, so it's potential, I guess, potentially. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Madeline?
Yes. I just want to tell you guys from DOT, the bike share, we used to have a dock on Reed Street. They took it away after Sandy because it got flooded. Now, the reason I'm going to promote Reed Street again is in the middle of the block is one of the only places down here that did not flood. Because a friend of mine was, marooned out there all night during the flood, and the water came up about a half an inch on his tires. The middle of Reed Street. So why you want to put it on Conover is beyond me, because that definitely flooded. And we did have one on Reed Street before. The two restaurants are there. The safest place that it's not going to flood is like right in front of or across the street from the Crab Shack. That's the only place on that street that doesn't flood, or in this area, this immediate area.
Thanks,
but
Madeline.
They told us when they took that one away that they'd put another one back. So I'm all for it going back onto Reed Street, but not on Conover. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
Thanks,
welcome.
Madeline.
David there.
Michael K. And Michael, if you would just identify yourself for your affiliation, if you have any.
Hi, I live in the same building as Stephen on Congress Street. Wanted just to echo what Joanna said, that this is a great expansion. I think the neighborhood needs a lot more access. I have a lot of problems trying to dock often. There's not that many spaces. In terms of kind of the specific issues around Congress, I have a little bit of a different perspective than the issues that Stephen mentioned. I actually think that it's a great asset to the safety of our block. That currently at the end of the CitiBike station, there is a larger than usual gap between the parked cars that as recently as last week, ambulance used to bring stretchers in through that. So I'd actually hate to see the station go and have it just be filled with bumper to bumper cars and actually reduce the access for ambulances and emergency vehicles. I think a great solution though to address the concerns raised about some of this is if there could be a gap built in, similar to what was discussed before that I've seen around storm drains. That would be a great solution to preserve pedestrian access and ambulance access, while all the benefits that we would get from having a dock chair on our station, including less pollution and all those other benefits. So just wanted to add that point.
Thanks, Michael. Duncan,
Hello?
we can hear you.
Okay, great. One of you guys mentioned while we were talking about why the expansion was only in rich and white neighborhoods or quote unquote affluent neighborhoods. I believe someone mentioned that they the black and the other neighborhoods weren't in their phase one plan. I'm wondering why was they not in your phase one plan? Who responded to the question about the rich and white neighborhoods? Was it Joanna Smith? Yes. Who answered the question? Oh, Mabel. Okay.
Mabel, yeah.
Yeah, Mabel. Thank you. Thank you, Mabel. Why were black and brown neighborhoods not within your expansion or your phase one expansion?
So the phase 1 and 2 expansion that we started in 2016. So I think from a programmatic perspective, we had to start in the denser areas of Manhattan, and we have to work our way out like connectedly in order for the network to be successful. So it's not lost on me that that a lot of those neighborhoods do overlap with white, richer neighborhoods, and that's definitely why we're working to expand our program so that we can connect more neighborhoods that have less access to transportation and really would benefit from alternate modes like bike share. But unfortunately, if we were to do islands of bike share, the program wouldn't, we need to keep a connected network. So we're definitely working on growing the program, as mentioned. Infill is focusing on growing the existing areas to meet the demand that's created by expanding further out to other neighborhoods.
You said problematic in your response. You said something was problematic. What exactly are you referring to as problematic? Exactly within these black and brown neighborhoods, you said there was a problematic element to it. Is that not what you said?
Duncan,
no, I don't think that's what I said. Yeah.
That wasn't what she said. She said she understands the issues with wanting to expand into black and brown neighborhoods, and the fact that it's not there yet is problematic, and it's something that they're working to address.
Okay. So the only way it works is then why was it started there? That's sort of my biggest issue. Like, if you look at the overlaps, we're clearly out of it. So that when you guys were planning this whole phase one, was there not a single person to point out this big flaw within your plans? That none of these bike expansions were going to black and brown neighborhoods? Was there not a single person that could point out, oh, this is not going to the black and brown neighborhoods? We're limited access to CitiBikes to only rich and white neighborhoods. Was that not a single person of color, not even of any person that cares about people using CitiBikes to get exercise or move around the city that brought this issue up during the phase one planning of this? Why was this not brought up at all? Why was this not brought up? That's sort of my issue is This is an obvious flaw. It's right there. This is my first time coming to a meeting, and even I can see this. I'm not an expert by any means, but my issue is that why was this allowed to go through? It had to go through a planning phase and had to be verified someone for it to be presented. You said the phase one started in 2016. So from 2016 until 2021, right?
Phase one started in 2013.
Sorry, 2013.
Yeah.
Thank you. So from 2013
Thank you, Emma.
to now, why did nobody bring this issue up at all? Why was there no other plans made to rectify this issue at all?
Duncan, I think you raise a good point. I'm not sure that the folks here from DOT can answer that. And I don't think that any of them actually were with DOT when the program first rolled out, but your point's well taken. In my day job, I certainly understand your concerns and share your concerns. One of the things I do as an advocate running a political action committee that's focused on transportation in New York City is urging the city to subsidize CitiBike expansion with public funds. It currently receives no public money at all. So I encourage people to reach out to their elected officials to ask them to support the subsidization of the bike share program. The reason the program was designed the way it was because it was intended to start in the most dense parts of the city and work its way out. And clearly that is an issue, and it is an equity issue. And it's something hopefully that we can address rapidly moving forward with the program. Thank you for your interest in it and for your point of view. I'm going to move on to Obi.
That's crazy.
And I'm going to be really quick because Duncan, you hit on a lot of what I was going to say. I also just want to say as well, too, I acknowledge that no one in this space right now is making this from Department of Transportation or CitiBike. We're the ones who are making these, like, who was there in 2013, you know, that frustration that we feel. I'm not going to co-opt Duncan's feelings that I feel personally. It's not directed towards anyone in this space. I completely understand that. I just think that when we talk about, you know, representation, or we talk about when we talk about public safety, all of these things are connected. We had a town hall with Congressman Velasquez on Monday, and in the we had representatives from various different NYPD housing authorities. The NYPD housing liaison was there, and they were talking about a lot of statistics that I know that you guys already know. You know, major crime in New York City went down 1% last year, but in public housing it went up 2%. When you think about gun violence, it went up 103%. Why am I bringing it up now in pertinence to the conversation surrounding CitiBike? All of these things are created. One thing that the housing liaison from the NYPD, and I called him out on this at the meeting too, said that really pissed me off was that we don't know why there are increases in gun violence, and especially involving young people. Like, that's not true at all. We know it's a lack of resources. We know it's a lack of things that are brought to our communities, you know? So when we have these conversations, when we have these things, I think it's important to create space for people who are part of these communities, who are living these experiences, to vent and obviously explain there, because like being an ally and like doing the work is not the same thing as living the experience. It's just not, and nor will ever be. So keeping that in mind as well too. And also remembering that timelines are important. 5 years to people who are privileged is a lot of time. 5 years to people who are not privileged is not a lot of time as well too. I deal with young people every single day who aren't able to go to work, go to school, things of that nature, because there's not transportation. And I've been at the same time, they're not persecuted, I don't know what's the right word. They're targeted by a criminal justice system that looks at them and says, well, why did you not pick other alternatives? What were the other alternatives? You know, keeping that in mind, all of these things are created. So while I understand, and as someone who I operate from a position of privilege as well too, as someone who takes CitiBike to work all the time, who's able to go to work, you know, there's levels to intersectionality. It's not always just black, white, brown, things of that nature as well too. But understanding that, like, while the expansion seems great for the surface, for the hegemony, the most powerful, it's really not going to do anything or really help others. So keeping that in mind as well too.
Thank you. Thanks very much for that. I don't see any other hands raised, so do you guys don't need a vote from the committee tonight on this then? Can you let us know what your timetable is for infill expansion in CB6 at this point? Do you have a handle on that?
Abel, do you want to talk about timeline?
Yep, sorry, I was looking for the unmute button. Yeah, so we're, this is an ongoing process. So we'll be, starting some of these installations, this month. Some will kind of happen on a rolling basis. So definitely look out for them, in the next couple of weeks. So,
Jerry? You're muted, Jerry.
Yes.
Jerry, you're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry, folks.
Take it from the top.
Take it from the top. I wasn't going to say anything until Mabel just spoke. I think if DOT comes to the community board to get our input, and they say they're going to start this relatively shortly without getting back to us, it's somewhat disingenuous. This list was available approximately, it was given to the community board or made available or public maybe 6-8 weeks ago. And you're here tonight and you're saying you want to begin, and this is the season to begin, spring, summer. That's when people will be more on bikes than they are in the fall and the winter. I understand that. But I really would appreciate if DOT were to come to us sooner so that this type of feedback, either pro or con, and it doesn't matter if it's move the spot, increase it, put it somewhere else. Why didn't you include this area? But if all that were to be made to if those comments were to be made to DOT earlier so that they could be incorporated into this phase and not wait another 18 months, 2 years for the next phase. So I really have a problem with that timing of the work to be done and coming to the community board. And Eric, when we finish this discussion, I have a question on a bike route that has been temporarily blocked by another city agency. And I'm just curious, but I'll wait for that until we finish this discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Doug?
Yeah, thanks. I want to thank the team at DOT, the bike share team, for a good presentation and your thoughtfulness. I just wanted to echo Michael Kay's suggestion. As some of these stations go from 20 to 30 bicycles to 30 to 40, when they are full, it is hard to access the curb even if you are a bike share user and are dropping your bike off and then need to get to the curb. So I would ask that as these stations reach some level, I don't know what that is, I'll leave that up to you guys, that gaps are built into the station where possible. So, every 10th bicycle, there's a gap so you can make your way through, just the way you build around the storm drains and that kind of stuff. I think that would help mitigate some of the legitimate concerns people have about accessing the curb from the street and vice versa. But thank you.
Camille?
Yes, hi. My name is Camille Malouf. I live at 200 Congress Street in Cobble Hill. And I would also like to echo what was said before by my two neighbors about the really the illogical placing, placing. I think it's there now, but I think there were a lot of better, more logical places in Cobble Hill for the kiosk in Congress Street. But the idea of expanding it now and blocking the gates of 200 and 210 is simply unacceptable. We have a lot of elderly people who need direct vehicular access from the street to those gates. Putting bikes in front of those gates will cut them off. And that in and of itself is reason enough to reconsider expanding that location. It's a large number of bikes that are there. And we have a park next door. And as others have said, you now have to cross the bike lane when you go north on Clinton Street to get to that bike kiosk. I've seen a lot of possible accident. I mean, people cross that. People are going the wrong way on Congress Street all the time. But it's just, we're a dense building. This is about 150 unit building, and we can't have our gates to the vehicular access blocked by those bikes.
Okay.
I think, we have I'm basically repeating myself, but we have a lot of strong objections among our neighbors, and I know I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of.
Thanks,
So
Camille.
thanks for hearing me out.
Sure thing. Thank you. Stephen, if you have something new to add, your hand's up again. If you could just keep it brief.
Yeah, very short. I think Jerry had mentioned it before. I just am surprised to hear that these expansions could be rolled out in a couple of weeks when this was our first opportunity to speak with you guys, and now we just got contact information for DOT to share comments and feedback. So at least for the dock on Congress Street, I would ask that you please allow us time to send you our feedback, and so you can take that into account and see there's a number of people who feel very strongly about this. And with regards to the noise issues, there are no residents in the park. There's no one to block access to, and so that space makes much more sense. Thank you.
Thanks. I think DOT has heard you and your neighbors clearly. Jerry, you wanted to raise another issue, and you're muted still, so.
Unmute myself. I got it. I'm sure the people from DOT tonight don't have the information, but on Imlay Street between Hamilton and Bound is the bike route that parallels Van Brunt Street. DDC, in their infinite wisdom, are going to put some barriers to prevent flooding. In other places in Red Hook where they put the barriers on the sidewalk, they did not close the street or the bike route along Reed Street where they are, and along Beard Street between Richards and Van Brunt. They placed them and traffic continued to flow. However, on Imlay between Baum and Hamilton Avenue, they fenced off with Jersey barriers, a cyclone fence, the two-way bike route, and the sidewalk. It has been like that for nearly a month, actually probably 6 to 8 weeks. No work has been done. And for the southbound route, they have showing signs, detour signs for the people on bicycles to go down Van Brunt Street, which is not very safe for the people. I know it's a shared route, but on weekends it's very tough with all the traffic and the buses. And during the week you have the trucks. And the community board was not notified. There was no public notice about this detour for bicycles or the closing of the 2 bike lanes. In the future, I would appreciate that we get some notification. And I know that DOT hands this project off to DDC. But between the two of you, there has to be a way for the community to become aware that you are literally going to fence off a fairly long block section of a 2-way bike lane, bike route, and provisions that were made are, the signage is really not adequate. The provisions, the notifications, nothing was done really for the community. It was done at the convenience of the agency and the contractor. And I just want to make sure that this does not happen again.
Hi, Jerry.
Everybody.
I can speak a little bit on that. We are aware of the situation there, and we have been working with DDC. Part of the MPT plan that was in place for that location was not installed correctly, but we are working to address the situation there and make sure that the signage is appropriate. We have been in contact with the contractor and DDC to try to make sure that they stay on top of that.
I understand, and I'm happy to hear that, but the installation of those Haskell barriers, I think they're called, well, with the sand-filled barriers, should not take this long. And if it's going to take this long and there is a problem, then the bike route should be opened again until the scheduling is proper and everything is set. They should not have to suffer Van Brunt Street in the southbound direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Doug?
Yeah, just one quick thing. I certainly do want DOT to be sensitive to the people on Congress Street, and I hear the concerns about accessibility and for elderly residents. But I did look at this Google Street View from a few years, and there's a row of SUVs and Subarus and other cars parked there. So, you know, I think until we're really talking about loading zones in front of buildings, like my building does not have a loading zone in front of it, and it's often impossible to get out from between two parked cars to get in a taxi or have someone drop you off. You know, I would just like DOT to maybe the compromise here is to just perhaps leave a few gaps here and there. Like Michael said earlier, there's a current gap between the parked car and the current station. If that stuff can be built in, hopefully that will assuage those fears and still provide the expanded access to the CitiBike station that's needed to, you know, meet docking needs. So thanks.
Thanks, Doug. Camille, did you have your hand back up? Or was that up from before?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to just respond to this last comment. I mean, when you do have these bike docks, they literally are blocking any space that may be available between cars. And we all know that we have, you know, cars are not touching each other when they're parked. There's usually enough space for somebody to get by between two cars parked behind each other. So that's a, you know, that's really, that's a big difference.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you again.
Sure thing. Thank you. Joanna, I'll give you the last word before we wrap up.
Great. I just actually had a related but unrelated compliment to pass along to DOT, and also was looking for more information on, we had a very small but persistent flooding problem in our roadway at 7th Avenue in Union that persisted for many, many years. And miraculously, hallelujah, you guys came out and fixed it. And it happened so fast once it actually happened. The milling, the paving, and the marking all happened in one day. And I've never seen that from any other DOT project. So I just was wondering if anyone had the local scoop on how that miracle happened and how we can make it happen more often at other locations. Thanks.
Yeah,
Well,
scheduling.
Yeah,
It doesn't
Emily.
always work. No, I was just going to say scheduling sometimes doesn't always work where all our units can, you know, come together on a project, but you know, there are some instances that they do. So
The other thing with that one, Emily, is that was all done with in-house resources. What winds up happening is most of the projects that you're talking about, Joanne, are either capital projects or projects that we have to get a contractor to do. So that also takes into place the amount of time that it takes to get it done. When we use only in-house resources for a specific small project, it's easier for us to get things done a lot quicker than normal.
So Leroy did it.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. I appreciate the participation and the input. Please use the feedback portal that DOT provided a link to give your feedback that way. You can also use their email address. Please do copy info@brooklyncb6.org if you are emailing DOT about particular locations. We appreciate the community participation in this, and we appreciate DOT coming to us with the update. With that, our next meeting is going to be April 15th. We'll have a presentation from New York City Transit on the work to make the 7th Avenue station accessible, update on the elevator installation there. So thanks, everyone, and stay safe, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Good night, everybody, and DOT, thank you for bringing this information to us.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, and
Night,
thanks,
everybody.
thanks to Mark
Thank you.
Torrance for running the technical end of the meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Good
Good
night.
night.